Spider-Man. Man, that guy is in everything. He is in those comic books, he is in those movies, and a bunch of other stuff. When it comes to the comics, he has had a lot of different iterations. Even for the movies, there was that first guy, and then the other guy, and then this newer guy. I mean, man, there is a lot of this newer guy. But with his upcoming movie, Brand New Day, it seems like the hype is generational. He is just moving different in this one based on the trailers alone, and I think we're all hyped for it. As an artist, I'm trying to make something cool for this movie. I love comic books, I love the movies. Why don't we merge both and create a Spider-Man Brand New Day comic book cover? Man, that is such a cool idea, Andrew. Thank you. Subscribe. Okay, let's jump right into it. What does a comic book cover need? Let's look at the anatomy of a cover. On the top, you have your title, usually a character's name. And on the left, you'll have the publisher. Obviously, in this case, it'll be Marvel. You also have the corner box, which is usually in the top left, but sometimes, depending on the issue, is on the bottom right, like this one here. And of course, you have the main appeal, which is the cover art. With all that being said, let's jump right in. First, we start with the sketch. I like to sketch with paper and pencil, just to kind of initially vomit out all the ideas in my head. But once you have your ideas down, you can refine it to perfection on paper, but this is actually where I like to switch to digital. Procreate and Photoshop both allow you to really adjust things super easily. Most importantly being your composition and your colors that you can play around with, as well as being able to clean up and tighten all your lines. Now, I'm not going to do this piece digitally. I'm a traditional mediums artist, so once I have the composition laid out where I want everything, I actually use a projector to trace my drawing onto a big 11x17 Bristol vellum paper. This is the size real comic book artists use when making covers, so if you were to shrink this down but keep the ratio, this would actually be the size of a comic book. After I trace everything, I like to block the light from the projector to check how the tracing is going, and after that you should end up with something that looks like this. It's just a very light sketch that we can now work on top of. There was 3 important things I knew I wanted to get right to really make this look like Tom Holland's Spider-Man, specifically his Brand New Day suit, and those 3 things are, first, his web shooters, which he has specific to this movie, and his mask lenses, which kind of traverse across all of his different suits through all the different movies. They keep those Romita Senior kind of looking lenses. And third would be his spider emblem on his chest. If I could get those 3 things down onto this Spider-Man, I knew it would look like the actual movie version of the character, not just a generic drawing of Spider-Man. So that's exactly what I did. As you see, I kind of used my phone to bring up reference images of each of those 3 things, like the mask, and now you see I'm doing the spider emblem here. And so now I can just really talk about the actual drawing itself. For Spider-Man, I wasn't sure if I wanted to add abs or not, and this is a very specific problem because a lot of comic books use very skin-tight costumes that aren't very realistic. For this movie, a lot of fans are really interested in the suit having wrinkles and not being so skin-tight for the first time. But that's not really realistic to how comic book styles kind of look. I figured I'd just add the abs and go ahead and add the lines on top. It's a bit of a mixed kind of illustration looking style, but once I had all the webbing added on, then I went ahead and added all the webbing in different directions, the vertical lines and the horizontal lines, and I really tried to match the sewing pattern and the exact lines of his suit. The different actors for each of the Spider-Men have different suit patterns, so even just the thickness of their waists or their arms might be different from each other, which apparently Tom Holland's Peter kind of gets inspiration from Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield's suits once he, hangs out with them in No Way Home. So I think that's a cool little detail. Not that that's something you can kind of see in a drawing, but I just thought it was worth mentioning that it's cool. Okay, so that was my finished sketch of Tom Holland's Spider-Man. Now I'm going to move on to the not main villain of the trailers, but it seems like he might play a bigger part, at least in the beginning of the movie. Although I have a secret theory that he might just be completely wiped out by Spider-Man pretty early on in the movie. They're kind of marketing him as a bigger villain, but I don't know if he's really going to be long lasting. But this is Michael Mando's Scorpion character, which I think we last saw in Spider-Man Homecoming, and he was locked up in jail after Spider-Man kind of kicks his butt on the ferry. So you can see I'm adding both Scorpion kind of behind/below him, as well as his tail coming up to sting Spider-Man. And I thought that his tail could add a interesting curvy line to the composition of the drawing. It also seems like there's going to be some other side villain characters that Spider-Man is going to be fighting over, maybe a flashback kind of situation, and I think about 4 or 5 years has passed since the last movie happens chronologically in universe. So I think we were going to get a little flashback where he fights these 2 smaller characters, maybe more. So I'm adding Tarantula on the right, and then now here I am drawing Boomerang I don't think we're gonna see too much of those characters, but anyway. Now, you're probably thinking, hold up, is that just a photo of Zendaya that you're straight up copying? Listen, the whole internet is collectively in agreement that Zendaya is the hardest person on the planet to draw. If you haven't heard this before, go look it up. Zendaya is like famous in the art community for being like a person you cannot draw. And of course, she is like the second most important character. So compositionally, I had to make her bigger, big old floating head kind of situation that posters do. I know this Zendaya drawing is not the best, okay? It's not gonna be perfect. It's not even close. And it might not even be good. And the reason that I feel this way is because my wife, deadass, came up to my drawing and was like, yo, that does not look like Zendaya. So that was my wife, Kate. She has never picked up a pencil, by the way. She is just straight up was like, this needs fixing. So anyway, now I'm working on Sadie Sink's kind of mystery character. We know very, very little about her, but I think we all kind of have an idea on who she might be, and that is Jean Grey is probably the most popular opinion. And then right below her, I actually wanted to draw Hulk. It seems like he may be under some kind of telepathic mind control from her during this movie, so I wanted to kind of make it look like she was sending him out to battle in a way. Now, I'm actually gonna erase some of this Hulk drawing later, parts of his face, because I want it to look like he's in shadow, and I'll explain a little bit more about that later. But I just want to have this footage just to show some proof that I made something cool there. But it was at this point that I realized I kind of forgot to add the word logo, so I traced that real quick, and then it was time for inking. Now, inking, dude, I don't even know what to say about inking. If you are interested in the comic book industry at all, that is something really, really important to kind of learn. You don't have to become an inker. There are 3 jobs within the industry. Number 1 being a penciler. A penciler just makes the main elements from a white, blank piece of paper. Basically, they're the ones that put down all the ideas, make the composition. And then step 2, that drawing gets sent off to an inker where another artist actually picks it up and works on it as well. Now, firstly, I just wanted to show how slow and absolutely meticulous inking can be before I go ahead and speed up this footage here. But yeah, it is a slow, careful process. Now, inking is not just tracing. An inker can absolutely make or break a good or bad drawing. And so it's really important to make sure you have a good inker when you want to do comic book art. Something I wanted to slow down and focus on is his lenses here. I wanted the corners to look like they had a shiny effect. And I don't really show the final shot of that, but we'll see it later. There is one aspect of the pencil drawing that I didn't really like even after starting to ink, and that was where I put the Punisher. Now, I am so excited to see the Punisher in this film. I just watched season 1 of his show again. It is so good. But anyway, I went ahead and did a little sketch of him, and then I continued back into the inking of Jean Grey and also Zendaya here. Or sorry, I shouldn't assume it's Jean Grey. I should say Sadie Sink's character. Let me say that. Now, I'm also calling her Zendaya because that is not MJ, okay? I have a bone to pick with the MCU's version of MJ. It is not Mary Jane. Literally, it's Michelle Jones. But why even establish this character and then like totally make it a new, different, just make it a new character? Why? She's not this party girl. She's not this, dude, I can't even get into it. I would need a whole different video to get into my whole gripe with it. But anyway, the cool part about inking is that you can finally erase the drawing, make it just a nice line art. Something that comic book artists do when they need to ink it later is put an X mark where they're going to fill it in with blacks later. And I know I showed you that placement kind of sketch of where I was going to put the Punisher, and here is my final sketch of him. And now that he is placed in, I'm going to go ahead and start inking him too. Almost all, if not all of these characters are drawn from imagination, except for MJ, because I made these poses myself. But for the Punisher, I had this pose in mind where he was just holding his weapon. But when I was looking for references, there was just this perfect photo of him that I could recreate just one-to-one. I didn't have to do anything from imagination. So that came in clutch. That is exactly how I drew him. Little imagination needed. And then really quickly, I drew in some other elements like this webbing going through the 2 characters, the corner box with the Spider-Man character, and finally his word logo. One other thing I wanted to bring up about inking is that you're gonna make a lot of mistakes, and one thing that helps out is this whiteout. It's not whiteout, it's actually, the brand I use is a Copic white ink, but this white ink is literally a lifesaver, dude, to help fix my mistakes. And then last but not least in the inking stage, I kind of took a page out of manga artist's technique, and I did these speed lines for this boomerang that the boomerang character throws. It's also traditional in American comics too to see speed lines like this, but now it was finally time to add color. I was dying to add some color to this piece, so naturally I had to start with his red. Usually I use Copic markers to color in illustrations, but this was a Faber Castel marker, and it was buttery smooth. You didn't see any marker streaks. It all just laid in very nicely. I initially wanted to add a glare into his gloves, but I changed my mind a little bit later on to just fill it in. But I did want to do it a little bit lighter in the center just to give it some 3D kind of rendering. And now showing you the real-time process, I'm gonna go ahead and speed up the footage, and it's very satisfying. It kind of reminded me of like being a child again, like just coloring books and filling in nice flat colors. It's very, very nice. Very, very fun. In terms of adding highlights, I added a rim light, which you'll see on the right side of his face and the back of his arm. It kind of implies that there is a light source behind him and he's in front of it, and a little bit of a sun glare on the top left of his mask, which is something I stole from some of the other comic book covers of Spider-Man that I love. Moving on to adding some blue, same idea, very satisfying, very nice. Although I will say, I added a lot more white ink in the inking process near his, like the blue parts of his suit. And so it kind of messes it up a little bit. Like when you add the colored marker on top of the white ink, it messes it up. If you look at the top left arm, it's a little bit darker, it's a little weirder. So anyway, that's just something to be wary of if you're trying the same materials that I'm using. I also added a real quick hint of shading in the mask, below the mask, and a bit of a cast shadow on his leg here. Moving on to one of the other characters, I wanted to do the Scorpion. And I didn't want to do like a warm, bright, leafy kind of green. I wanted to do a darker, colder, more like dark academia green, because I felt like that was more fitting for his character and what the trailers kind of showed that green to look like. But anyway, let me shut up about the temperature of the colors. Let's move on to the boomerang guy. God, this guy's so funny. I don't know what his deal is. I'm really thinking he's just going to be a flashback, but he is such a funny idea as a character. I don't know. Maybe he'll be a real threat. Who knows? Nah, not with my boy Peter. There's no way. Quick little shout out to Tarantula too. I'm gonna go ahead and color him in as well. I started with colored pencil, but I eventually just switched over to marker. But yeah, not much to say here. Also, while I have you guys here, why don't we talk about it? Do you think that Tarantula is gonna be like a foil to Spider-Man? Because maybe just without the webbing? Or even talk about foils. What do we think Peter's gonna turn into? He's got this like weird mutation kind of theme going on. I don't know if it's the symbiote or if it's man spider. I don't know. Anyway, one little detail I wanted to add is that his web shooters are actually glowing a green light. So I went ahead and grabbed a acrylic green and painted in these little dots. I think the green is supposed to be some kind of like inhibitor chip, like it doesn't allow him to mutate, because that's something that the Hulk invented, so it's helping him. And then I'm gonna go ahead and do the same thing for Punisher, color him in. He's nice and easy. He's just black and whites, which is good. And then after that, I'm gonna go ahead and add the black color to Zendaya's hair. She still looks way too Caucasian, so just give me a bit. I'm gonna I'm gonna color her in. First, I start off with adding this cast shadow under her chin and like around her jawline up into it, and I kind of like followed that shadow past Frank Castle. Then I started to use the marker to give her more rendering, and it wasn't really working for me. I tried to add color pencils as well, and I don't know what it was. It wasn't looking good, so I'm gonna go ahead and fix this later. For now, let's jump over to the Hulk. I'm adding a shadow that both connects him and I want to keep saying Jean Grey. It connects him and Sadie Sink's character, and I wanted to add that shadow as a cool way to show like her control over him while still being able to see this side of him, which has his muscles, and still be able to draw the anatomy there. But I thought it was cool. I thought it was going to be a cool idea to add him into this shadow and show you it's not really the real Hulk. I'm using Copic markers to add different levels of gray to show the 3D forms of each of his muscles, like the deltoids here. Now you might be like, wait a minute, gray? Gray like Jean Grey? Anyway, yeah, I don't know if he's going to be Green Hulk. There's some rumors he's going to be Gray Hulk. So yeah, we're gonna see that. We're gonna see that. Anyway, that's them. I think they look cool. We are on the what's it called? The long stretch? The last stretch? I don't know. We're at the end here. I'm adding some rendering to Punisher, Frank Castle, and I'm gonna use a bunch of different materials here. I think I use colored pencil and marker and these little like micro like ink pens, and they're good. They're really good. It looks kind of weird up until I add a rim lighting on the back of his hair and kind of some shine on his face. as well as like on the gun. But once I add all that and maybe some arm hair, re-ink it, it looks good. One last thing is I'm gonna add a crosshair into his scope with this little white ink paintbrush, and I think this is one of the nicest little final touches here. Now for MJ, this is horrendous. I mean, she looks bad. I mean, this is like Botox scary MJ. I don't have any footage for doing this because I actually worked on her while I was at work, but I went from this to this and boom, she looks way better. If you're wondering what material I use for that, it's the Caran D'nash wax pastels. Basically they're crayons. I used the crayons to go over the marker because it was just looking horrendous. And then this the border for the little corner box guy I was working on, it was looking a little thin. I wanted to make it a little more thick, so I went ahead and did that with inks. And then believe it or not, I still had something else to pencil in. I forgot to add Brand New Day to the comic book, to the dang cover. So okay, I pencil that in and then I ink it, and then I can finally go ahead and add in some colors for the word logo stuff. So now we're coloring the word logo with the red, got some blue, gonna make a Spider-Man, gonna look good. Now, one thing I was kind of worried about was the red and blue kind of distracting the viewer from the Spider-Man drawing, but I think ultimately it actually kind of complemented it in a nice way. After this, I went ahead and added the publisher logo box, and I just copied a pretty 1-to-1 scale of an actual current Marvel corner box. And I just put this as #1 because it is Brand New Day after all. If the letters look a little wonky now, I'm gonna fix them up with white ink later. And I also went ahead and added some yellow to the Brand New Day, which I will again also touch up a little bit more later. Now finally, it was time to add the background color, and this is the first time I add paint into the illustration. I went ahead and used this apricot color, which is kind of like a very desaturated orange. I would say besides purple, orange is the only color not in this whole drawing, and so I thought it was going to be a nice background color. And so I used a very thin brush and tried to get all the details in the background. Once I did the top, I wanted to switch it up and maybe do a bit of a darker color for the bottom, so I used this really ugly dookie brown, and my wife said that I shouldn't have done that, and long story short, she was right. And basically, I don't have the footage for all of it, but I used that dark brown and covered the entire background at the bottom, and I had to repaint it, so she was right and I was mad. And yeah, so once I added the apricot color, it actually started to look nice. And then last but not least, I wanted to touch up the boomerang. I kind of had to add paint stroke as well as more ink to make it kind of fit into the scene better, but ultimately I think it ended up looking okay. I wanted to do some final touches on re-inking some parts, especially for the Brand New Day word logo, and so I used marker and the paint ink. I tried to make the block letters look a little bit more 3D, so it went from this to this. And now it's time for the reveal. I can't play the music without copywriting it. So I'm sorry. I just have to. Baby, can you harmonize with me? Okay, that's good. That's good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, she did that so good.
So hot.
What? Am I being weird? All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Wasn't that so much fun? I had fun. Did you have fun? You probably didn't do anything. You didn't do much drawing. Unless you drew while you were watching this video, in which case, yeah, it seems like maybe you might have had fun. I had fun. Didn't we all have fun? Okay. I never know how to end these things. This was a blast. This was my first ever illustration, which, if you don't know the difference between a drawing and sketches, those are just practice. An illustration is where you try and apply all those skills and make it into one kind of final piece. You try and apply all your skills. So that was a blast, and I'm so excited for the movie. It comes out tomorrow. We started here and then we ended here, and I think with that I am just so happy with it. So thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe. I'm gonna be making some more drawing stuff, and yeah. Okay, you're cool. Bye.